Hello, this video deals with static methods. We start by continuing on the static field variable example of a person. This here is the UML diagram of that person from the previous video. Notice the underline beneath the population field variable indicating this is a static field variable. And this was the code matching the diagram. Notice the static keyword on the population field variable. In order to access the population data and to do something with it, for example print it out, I added an accessor method. And then the example code to test this, here in this main method. Each time a new person object is instantiated, here Anna and Brian, the population is incremented by 1 in the person constructor. And no matter which specific person object I used to retrieve the population, the value was the same because the static field variable belongs to the person class rather than an instance of person. And so the value is shared across all instances of person. Now, I think it is a little bit silly to access class data, which is that static field variable, through instances of the class. Should it not be possible to access class data through a class method, instead of a method called on an instance? And yes, that is possible with a static method. Static methods are called on the class instead of instances of that class. If I add a static method to the person, it is called on the person class rather than an instance of the person class. So let's update the getPopulation simply by adding the keyword static to the method signature, like this. Now, this method can no longer be called on an instance of the person class, rather it is called directly on the person class itself. So let me find a main method again, simplify it a bit. And now, instead of calling the method on the Anna person variable, I call the method on the person class. I can then print out the population value, which is now 1, because one person has been created. If I created more person instances, the population will increase, and I can call the static getPopulation method again to retrieve the current population. Let's try a different scenario, which is a bit more common. Static methods are often used for utility methods or helper methods. A classic example is to put various math functionality into a class as static methods. Java actually has this already, but let's just make our own version here. I start by creating a new class. I am never going to create a new instance of this class, that's not the intention, so I don't care about adding a constructor. I could actually create a private constructor to prevent instantiation, but I will skip that. I can now add static methods. Let's do an add method, taking two numbers, adding them together and returning the result. I define the method signature here, remembering the static keyword. And in the body, I just return the sum of the two parameters, like so. Then another class to test this with a main method. And let's try the static method, but calling it on the math helper class and passing in two arguments. The static method returns the result, which I can do something with, for example print it out. Let's just go back to the math helper class again and add another method, which can calculate the circumference of a circle. The method takes one parameter, the radius, or it could have been the diameter, and now I need pi. So let me define a static field variable for that. I will assign it a value here right away. And given that pi never changes, I will make it final. This means that the value of the variable cannot change. And then back to the method body, let's calculate the circumference and return the value. And that's about it. Remember, static methods can only use field variables marked as static. And the methods are called on the class itself rather than an instance of the class.